Okay, so I'm going to start sharing some stories from my workplace because I have had quite a unique experience working at an international institution. It's going to be all over the place because it was a very diverse experience for me. Some parts I really loved, some parts were very traumatizing, especially the last couple of years at this workplace. It's been a year, it's actually been 14 months since I quit my job. I quit willingly, even though I was kind of pressured into it. They did not want me to stay there. Obviously, they attempted to make my life difficult, but I sued them and I won. But unfortunately, there were many other reasons as to why I could not stay there. I just could not continue staying there because I could see a lot of hostility towards the union, which I was a part of, which I dedicated much of my time to, and it was really taking a toll on me for various reasons. Again, the union case was just one little thing. It was almost like the tip of the iceberg. There were a ton of other things that were happening behind the scenes for me, considering the fact that I'm also on the spectrum, but nobody cares. And I did, unfortunately, talk to some people at my workplace about this. I confided in them, and yeah, it was not great. They did not do anything. They literally did not do anything to support me. So yeah, I was very naive thinking that people would support me. Yeah, but now I know better. I know better, of course. Under capitalism, you're not going to receive any support. So disclosing any kind of medical information, any kind of diagnosis is not going to be helpful for the vast majority of us. So take it as you will. But going back to the fact that I worked at an international school for 17 years, I quit 14 months ago. And it's been a wild ride. It was a very interesting experience. It is one of the oldest schools here in these lands. It was established in the 90s when the Soviet Union dissolved untimely. This is when all of those organizations came in. They swooped in, seeing if they can profit off of people's misery, people's insecurity. And these kind of schools became a favorite place for a lot of politicians, a lot of the nouveau riche, and a lot of the newly coming in business people who were coming in for all kinds of business opportunities. So the clientele was very much the bourgeoisie. So I've met with a ton of rich people over the course of these 17 years, and I've had a lot of very interesting experiences. I got to know people, their families. I got to know all the ins and outs of many people's lives. And it was a very interesting experience indeed. I also traveled pretty extensively during those 17 years because I could afford to. I was paid okay. It was not great. It was not amazing. We, as people who were not from the States or were not from an English-speaking country, so the locals, basically, we were all paid significantly less. And it's in the contract. And everybody knows this. And it's not surprising to anyone who worked in international education knows this. There is a lot of discrimination against people who do not come from a certain list of countries. It's usually the United States, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, you name it, those countries. Even some places in Europe, they don't really consider them to be on par. And it's not necessarily based on merit. It's not based on education. It's not based on anything. It's just racism and chauvinism. They just think that they are superior to everyone else. They think that the locals are never going to be able to provide the same kind of service. Of course, they're never going to say it. They're never going to admit to it. So again, allegedly, this is what I have come to. These are the conclusions I have come to, and a lot of my co-workers have come to as well, because many people who worked at this school, they worked there their entire lives. We had a person who worked there for 30 years since the very establishment of that school. So we had a ton of experience connecting with Americans, connecting with a lot of people from all over the world. Again, the clientele was mostly bourgeoisie, some local nouveau riche, some politicians, politicians and a lot of the intellectual elites from all over the world, again, whose businesses work here. So I'm not going to name any names or locations for my own safety. Again, all of this is my personal opinion, and these are all alleged speculations. I'm not claiming anything. I'm just sharing my own personal experience. I'm not advising anyone to use or not use any kind of services, so I'm not trying to harm the reputation of any institutions. But yeah, it was a really interesting ride for me. I have learned a ton. I've learned mostly because I was very interested in American culture, and connecting with Americans in the past before I became a communist was a thing that I really greatly valued. And I had a ton of friends. I've made a ton of friends who later moved back to the States or went elsewhere. And some of these people were truly amazing people. And I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to meet all of these people. And I used to joke all the time when people ask me whether I've been to the States. I've always said no, because it's the truth. And then they would wonder why and how. And I would say, well, I did not need to, because America came to me. Because there were so many, it was a mostly American school. It was even colloquially called an American school, even though it was an international school. So a lot of these people, I don't hold any grudges against. We've had a lot of fun together. We learned. I've even traveled with some folks. We had some wonderful adventures in Europe, but mostly my husband and I traveled during my work there. Again, just as I said, even though my pay wasn't amazing, it wasn't great, it was fine. I also made quite some money doing private tutoring, which I still do, but not on the same scale, just because I'm getting older and I'm in burnout continuously. So I don't really have a lot of that energy that I used to have in my 20s. But in my 20s, I would go to people's houses and provide private tutoring to the children who needed it. I had, again, a ton of really interesting, amazing encounters. Some of these families and we became kind of close, and it was a really nice exchange, cultural exchange, international exchange. Again, I really do appreciate having had all of these experiences. And I could see a lot of ins and outs. I could see a lot of the family dynamics, which I, again, truly appreciate. And of course, I'm not claiming that I know enough about all of these families. They all have their unique dynamics. And I know it is hard to live in a different country if your husband or your wife is given a contract with some big business and you just move to a new country. It is a difficult experience. I know that it is not easy. So I do have quite some sympathy for the expat community. And in my 17-year career and in all my travels, I got to meet a lot of people, and I got to experience a lot of the things that many people unfortunately don't get to experience if they're working class. So again, I'm very grateful to have had these experiences, but this is how I actually came to communism, because I saw that it was not fair. It was very simply not fair that people get to do things and experience things just because they have money. And then something strikes them, a disease, some kind of a force majeure, some kind of disaster strikes them, and then it's all taken away from them. And granted, it didn't really happen to me. It was a series of unfortunate events that led to me leaving this place. I would not be able to stay in this place for much longer because I was so burnt out. And if you're interested in talking more about why I left, you can comment. Only if you comment politely, maybe I will make a response to you talking about this. And I have seen with my own eyes the way that people lived in all these different places all over the world. Mostly we traveled to Europe. We did go to some places in Asia and in Africa and in Eurasia overall, Southeast Asia as well. And I've seen people live in all these different places, and I've seen how capitalism has affected everyone, everywhere. Even in places like Vietnam and China, who have fought very hard to liberate themselves from imperialism, I could see some of the effects that capitalism has on the people. Again, I'm not going to speak about China and Vietnam and whether they're actually socialist or not, because I do not know enough, and I don't think you should be speculating. I think you should go and study, go read some experts on China and Vietnam and all the other socialist projects that we have in the modern times. Do not just jump into conclusions based off of Western propaganda. Okay, so educate yourselves first before speaking. And I'm not claiming either or, because again, I don't know enough. But going back to the fact that I have seen a lot of the same dynamics all over the world. In Europe, I've seen a ton of poverty. I've seen a ton of people struggle. I've seen all this beautiful architecture and all these beautiful achievements. And I've also seen a lot of destitution, a lot of substance use, a lot of things that could be eradicated very simply if the resources were allocated differently. And this is why this is one of the reasons why I've come to become a communist. And the other reasons were I started actually educating myself. I started reading the books, reading the works. I'm going to include some of the key works down below, just as I did in the past. And I do recommend you read at least a few of these texts. Most of these texts are very short. They're not going to take too much time, maybe 30 minutes or less each text is going to take you. So please educate yourself. If you have any questions about my work at an international school, you can go ahead and ask. I'm going to make a few more videos about this, again, without naming any names or any kind of locations, because I know that some of these organizations may be very prone to suing people. And again, all of these evaluations are just my thoughts and speculation. They're not meant to be some kind of deep analysis. I'm just sharing my own personal experiences. I have a right to talk about my experiences, and I did love a lot of the parts of this experience. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope you have a great day today. Consider support me on Patreon. Do take care of yourself and your community first. And subscribe to me on all the social medias, even though I don't do much there. And I'll talk to you sometime later.